Okay guys, so today we're going to look at doing a slick back a la Leo DiCaprio style from The Wolf of Wall Street. Now, as you can see, obviously I've the sides are already a little bit shorter, which I worked down with scissor over comb, which is on a separate demo, so I'll send you that one as well. But the kind of sectioning pattern you kind of need for this sort of style is, what you want to do first is, obviously during your consultation with your client, work out which side they want the parting to go to. So looking at my gent's natural 4, his parting wants to go over here. So obviously the best thing to do, get it all wet down or shampoo it, comb it all back, and then push it forward, see where the parting wants to go, and then work from that side. Obviously, if you've got quite a prominent crown growth, so if you've got a double crown that wants to go this way or this way, always try and work with the crown growth as well. So for example, if the client wants it to come this side but the double crown is growing that side, what you might want to do is discuss with them about putting the parting for the haircut on this side, because it will be much easier for them to maintain at home if the double crown is going in this direction. Today, luckily for me, my client doesn't have a double crown. He's got a bit of a cow's lick, which works in well with the up and to the side style. And if this was a little bit more prominent here, you could almost say had a little bit of a widow's peak, which Leonardo actually does have naturally himself. So once you've got it all sectioned off, what you need to do is you kind of need a sort of triangle section from the apex to just below the crown. So you don't really, previously when you've done graduated haircuts, we may have worked down into quite a sharp V at the back. We're not looking to do that because you want to try and keep some of this weight here. So just slightly above the occipital but below the crown into a triangle section. On the diagonal across here, just makes it easier for you to section. And then this front panel, this is where our parting is going to be. So then we're going to elevate this section up and cut it to over direct the fringe back a little bit so that it maintains the length to be able to sweep up and over. So what we're going to do first is we're going to layer through the back and sides. Then we're going to cut the top. Then we're going to make sure it's all connected in. For this sort of hairstyle, probably best suited to clients that have got type 1 or type 2 hair that's easily blow dried out a little bit smoother. If your client has got type 3 or type 4 hair, obviously what you're going to need to do is explain to them that they're going to have to work at it with hair dryers, brushes, products and straighteners possibly to get that smooth kind of finish. Alright, so when you're cutting the back and sides, always work with the side that's easiest for you to cut first. Now, because we want the haircut to come backwards, what we're going to do is we're going to start at the sides and we're going to work our way back. If we were doing, say, a mod cut, which we will look at in a couple of sessions, then what you would do is work at the back and work forwards, because it's easier for you to over direct the front back for you to get that sort of feathery effect. We don't want that today. It's quite a classic finish. Most of your cutting technique, I would probably say, would be club cutting, unless the hair is quite abundant and you may want to point cut through the top. You will probably need to use some kind of texturizing technique once it's dry. So make sure that the hair is evenly damp all the way through. Otherwise, you're going to get some areas that are nice and clean and some areas that aren't, because don't forget, it doesn't stretch at the same level. So on actual real clients, you probably won't get this bit of hair that bumps up here. That's usually on these blocks where they punch the hair into the head. So we want to take our first section. So if we look at using your wide teeth of your comb, nice clean section. So you want to go slightly on the horizontal. So you don't want to go too horizontal. So you don't really want to go all that way. All right, reason is the more horizontal you are, the more weight you're going to build up. So we want to reduce some of the weight around the sides. What we don't want to do is a traditional sort of short graduation. It's a very sharp 45-degree angle, so you're building up quite a triangular shape there. Because we want it to go back, we don't really want that sort of wedge of weight coming through this side. So we are going to make the sections a little bit more horizontal. 45 degrees is a bit of a rough estimate when it comes to more sort of advanced precision work for level 3. So use it as a rough guide. Basically, wherever the angle of your comb and your fingers are is going to be the angle and build up of weight of your haircut. Okay, so if you want less weight, you go rounder, so more towards 90. Okay, if you want more weight, you go more towards 45. Today we're kind of looking at about halfway in. Okay, so we're going at about 30, 35. Okay, you don't really need to be too technical about the angles at this level. What you're looking at is to create the shape really. So let's put in our first guide. So I'm going to use my connection point from the scissor over comb that I've done around the edges, and I'm going to bring that angle out. I'm going to visually have a look at it. You've discussed with the client the kind of shape that they need. Have a look at their head shape. If they've got a square head shape, you may want to bevel it in a little bit more to 90 degrees to try and counteract that squareness. So here we go, first section. So just club cut down, okay, and then continue that towards the back of the head around to the occipital. So as we come round, okay, so typically I would hold it like that. So for you guys to be able to see, it might be easier if I go that way, possibly not. So we'll come round, there's my guide, and then you're literally working those sections. Technically they're called diagonal backs. Okay, so you're working them round, all the way round to the middle, so the centre back of the head to the occipital. If your client's got quite long hair and you need to remove some of the length first, it may be an idea to do a little bit of scissor or clipper over comb to get your bulk removal in first. Alright, obviously don't forget, don't cut it too short, because otherwise you're not going to have anything there to structure your shape with. So we move round. Be aware of your body positioning as well. You don't really want to over direct it, so make sure you're not stood over here and make sure you're not stood over there. So we come round to the centre. If you find you're losing your guideline a little bit, comb it from both sides, get nice even tension, and then work down towards the bottom. So to cross check it, because I've cut it vertically, I'm going to pick it up horizontally and cross check it. So what you're looking for, we haven't done a massively sharp 45 degrees. Okay, so what I'm looking for is basically a shape that follows the head shape as I'm coming around to the occipital. Obviously you're checking for finger marks and things like that as well. So the other side, we want to again move around and work from the front towards the centre back. Okay, so the reason is if you carry on through this way, coming forward, you're going to build weight at the front, and we want it to come back neatly off the face. So slightly on the diagonal again with your sections, not too sharp an angle, otherwise you're going to give yourself a bit of a wedge there, which we don't really want for this haircut. And then carry that through. There's my guide. Okay, so depending on whether you're left or right-handed, you're going to have to move your finger positioning around from one side to the other. Okay, so you may find one side it's easier to cut with your fingers pointing down, and the other side it's easier to cut with your fingers pointing up. So we're going to move around. Okay, just keep going. Don't you guys all know at this level to use the wide teeth of your comb to section the hair, and then unless you're working with type 4 or type 3, very coarse hair, you want to use the smaller teeth of your comb to actually take your cutting line section with. This is because it keeps your tension tighter and therefore you'll get a cleaner haircut. These types of haircuts are all about neat sections, precision work, and obviously your products and your finish. Alright, don't forget, don't try and cut all the way up to the end of your finger because you will cut yourself. So obviously I'm moving the block round. You can obviously move your client around in the chair, but typically you would be moving around in the chair. Sorry, not in the chair. You would be moving around the client's head with your haircut, okay? So travelling guide, because we're going around the head with it, not a stationary guide like you would use for an over direction point or a perimeter length haircut. So when you get to the centre of the back, just double check that you've got it all in from the middle, okay? Because sometimes what you can do is cut to here and then cut to here, and you've got a little bit there that you've kind of accidentally forgotten about. So we're going to cross check horizontally, so we're going to bring it up. We're going to make sure this connection point joins in with that connection point, and we're going to move around the side of the head to make sure that that's all following the head shape. Okay, so now what we need to do is make sure both sides are the same length. So, move your client round, use your mirror, come round and check it. Now we've got a little bit more weight on this side because this is where our parting's going to be. So once you've put in your graduation here, okay, then what you probably want to do is just elevate this up slightly to take this corner off here. Okay, so this connection point needs to go in with that connection point, and you can either stand behind, lift the hair up this way to take the corner off, or you could come around and you could cut it that way. Okay, there's no, as with most sections and barbering skills, there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's really personal preference on what you prefer to do. And then just connect that point into that point there. Okay, so that should bring us with a little bit less weight here. Excellent. Right, so now what we need to do, take down this section, triangle at the back. Now, we don't want to cut loads and loads of length off because the haircut sweeps back and you're looking at building that sort of rounded shape around here. So, comb it all down. If you need to spray it down a little bit, do that as well. So, you can either start from here and you can bring it back this way and then start from there and bring it back that way, or you can start in the middle and work outwards, okay? It's entirely up to you. I'm going to do it slightly different than perhaps we would have done it at level 2. So at level 2 we would have picked it up from here and worked out like a uniform layer. So I'm going to continue with the slightly horizontal, so the diagonal back sections, and I'm going to bring, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to over direct this slightly onto this previous section here to maintain my weight through the centre back. So I'm going to work that from there. Okay, and there's my guide there. And then I'm going to go to the centre, comb out of the way of the hair that you don't want to cut to make it easier for you to see. There's my guide, so I'm going to go up to there. Okay, so on the other side, I'm going to work from this connection point here. So again, with the diagonal back section, okay, move out of the way the hair that you've either already cut or you don't want to cut in your section yet. And then I'm going to comb this down to this section to connect it in with my connection point there. Okay, and then I'm going to work that through to the centre back. So still following the same angle that I cut the previous section with to maintain the build up of weight towards the top. As you get to the middle or the centre back, then just over direct all of that onto that previous section to make sure you've got even balance at the back. So as you move the client's head round, if you move the hair around a little bit, you can see that you've got shape here. We've built up the weight here, so we've got volume here, and then obviously we've got precision, tight graduation going into the bottom. To make a modern twist on it, you could do a taper at the bottom. Okay, so look at that as well. Right, so just check the balance on this section before you move through to the final section at the top. So take your clips out. If it's started to dry out a little bit, spray it down a little bit more. Moving down a little bit so you can see. Now typically you wouldn't tip the client's head forward, but I'm just going to do that so you can see the sections. Now what we don't want to do is we don't want to put a section through here and we don't want to cut horizontally and follow out at 90 degrees all the way round, because then we're going to end up with a uniform layer and you're not going to get the shape where this side's going to be able to come back that way because it'll be too short here. So what we're going to do is we're going to come horizontally but slightly diagonal towards the back again, and we're going to stand behind your client and you're going to elevate up. Okay, so you've already cut this part here. We don't want to connect this bit in with that bit because it will give you too much of a rounded shape. So you're just going to follow that angle upwards. Okay, so you're going to create length from shorter to longer. So if you take, just moving back round, if you take a diagonal section from the crown, including some from this zone here that you've cut, and then you come back round, and then you elevate upwards, your guide and your connection point you will be able to see from the crown of the head. Okay, so there's my guide there. Now if the hair is particularly thick, you may want to point cut it. You can always do that afterwards if you want to cut it first and see how it sits. So once you've cut that bit, just half it. Next section, about a centimetre wide. Take some in from your previous section. Now you don't want to over direct this all back towards the crown because you're going to have too much length at the front else, okay? So you just want to keep working through towards the front, and you only really want to start over directing this front section. So take your subsequent section, comb the rest of the hair that you've already previously cut back, come across the top. I find it helpful to comb forward the bits I don't want to cut yet. Just makes it a little bit more methodical for myself. Keep your elbow up in the air. What you see a lot of people do is they'll get their tension and they'll get the guideline and then they'll do this. All right, that makes you run the risk of rounding this off here, and we don't really want to do that. So there's my guide. my guide there, so still not over directing at this point. And now I'm connecting that point into that point there. That's my guide. And there's my connection point here. So this front section, I'm going to slightly over direct back onto the previous section, not all the way back to the crown, just back slightly so that we maintain a little bit of length around here. Don't forget, maintenance of length, you can always take it off afterwards if you've got too much length there. Okay, but if you've cut it off to start with, you can't stick it back on. So let's have a look. So lifting back up. So to check how the haircut is sitting, comb it into the style that you'd like it to go in. So the aim is this side comes back this way. We've got what we call a natural parting because we haven't put a hard part on it with the trimmers or the razor, and this comes back and up and then back at the sides that way. So have a little look round. If you're feeling some kind of areas are a little bit too heavy, just have a quick check through. You may have missed a corner here. Double check it all. Cross check it by coming across the top this way. Okay, what you're looking for is for that slight angle towards the front. It's not going to be massive, don't forget, because we only over directed it back a little bit. Just make sure everything's even. Be careful not to comb it all up like that and think, oh, I've got a shorter bit there. Don't forget, you cut it in this direction, so this length of hair is going to be shorter than that length of hair there. Okay, so whatever you do, don't pick it up and think, oh, that bit shorter, and then round it off. Okay, because you'll ruin the shape of the haircut. You're basically back to sort of basic uniform layer then. So you may wish to just double check the fringe, so pull it forward. You might want to suggest to your client that they just have the length removed out of their eyes a little bit, just in the event that if they decide to get up one day and they're not going to work or they're not going anywhere where they want to style their hair, if they don't blow dry it back or style it, it's not going to be hanging in their eyes. Okay guys, right, so to recap, horseshoe section first and scissor over comb this back section. If you've got a lot of length, I would cut some of it down first and then do it. Okay, and then we had natural parting section here, triangular section here, triangular section here. Get this bit up out the way, roughly about 35 degrees around the back and sides with horizontal diagonal backs. Not too horizontal, don't forget, otherwise you'll create a wedge. And then this side, before we cut that part, we connected this layer into that there layer, so you're just layering through the brachial ridge just to remove some of the weight. And then the top section we elevated up and cut from shorter to longer using your guideline from the crown and slightly over directed back the front. Okay, so I'm gonna stop this bit here and then I'm going to dry it, okay, and then we'll go through how to clean up around the edges and I'll take you through a scissor taper at the neckline.